Home. As soon as we walked at least half a block from the school, Mom said, "So, how did you go? Did you like it?" "Not yet, Mom. When we get home," I said. The moment we got inside the house, I ran into my room and threw myself onto my bed. I could tell Mom didn't know what was up, and I guess I really didn't either. I felt very sad and a tiny bit happy at the exact same time, kind of like that crying feeling all over again. My dog Daisy followed me into my room, jumped up on my bed, and started licking me all over my face. "Who's a good girlie?" I said in my dad's voice. "Who's a good girlie?" "Is everything okay, sweetness?" Mom asked. She wanted to sit down beside me, but Daisy was hogging the bed. "Excuse me, Daisy." She sat down, nudging Daisy over. "Were those kids not nice to you, Augie?" "Oh, no," I said, only half lying. "They were okay. But they were nice. Mr. Tushman went out of his way to tell me how sweet those kids were." "Uh-huh," I nodded. But I kept looking at Daisy, kissing her on the nose and rubbing her ears until her back leg did that little flea scratch shake. "That boy Julian seemed especially nice," Mom said. "Oh no, he was the least nice. I like Jack though. He was nice. I thought his name was Jack Will, but it's just Jack. Wait, maybe I'm getting it confused. Which one was the one with the dark hair that was brushed forward? Julian, and he wasn't nice?" "No, not nice." "Oh," she said. She thought about this for a second. "Okay, so is this the kind of kid who's one who's one way in front of the grown-ups and another kid in front of the kids?" "Yeah, I guess." "Ooh, I hate those," answered Mom. He was like, "So, August, what's the deal with your face?" I said, looking at Daisy the whole time. Were you in a fight or something?" Mom didn't say anything. When I looked up at her, I could tell she was completely shocked. "He didn't say it in a mean way," I said quickly. "He was just asking." Mom nodded. "But I really like Jack," I said. "He was like, 'Shut up, Julian,' and Charlotte was like, 'You're just so rude, Julian.'" Mom nodded. She pressed her fingers on her forehead like she was pushing against a headache. "I'm sorry, Augie," she said quietly. Her cheeks were bright red. "No, it's okay, Mom, really. You don't have to go to school if you don't want to, sweetie." "I want to," I said. "Augie?" "Really, Mom, I want to," and I wasn't lying. First day jitters. Okay, so I admit the first day of school, I was so nervous that the butterflies in my stomach were more like pigeons flying around in my inside. Mom and Dad were probably a little nervous too, but they acted all excited for me taking pictures of me and Via before we left the house. It was Via's first day of school too. Up until a few days before, we still weren't sure I'd be going to school at all. After my tour of the school, Mom and Dad had reversed sides on whether I should go or not. Mom was now saying I shouldn't go, and Dad was saying I should. Dad had told me he was really proud of how I handled myself with Julian and that I was turning into quite a strong man. And I heard him tell Mom that he now thought she had been right all along. But Mom, I could tell, wasn't so sure anymore. When Dad told her that he and Via wanted to walk me to school today, too, since it was on the way to the subway station, Mom seemed relieved that we would all be going together, and I guess I was too. Even though Breacher Prep was just a few blocks from our home, I've only been on that block a couple of times before. In general, I try to avoid blocks where there's lots of kids roaming around. On our block, everybody knows me and I know everybody. I know every brick and every trunk and crack in the sidewalk. I know Mrs. Grimaldi, the lady who always sits by her window, and the old guy who walks up and down the street whistling like a bird. I know the deli on the corner where Mom gets our bagels, and the waitress at the coffee shop who calls me honey and gives me lollipops whenever she sees me. And I love my neighborhood of North River Heights, which is why it's so strange to be walking down these blocks feeling like it was all new to me suddenly. Ames Forest Avenue, a street I've been down a million times, looked totally different for some reason. Full of people I've never saw before, waiting for the buses, pushing strollers. We crossed Amforest and turned up Heights Place. Via walked next to me like she usually does, and Mom and Dad were behind us. As soon as we turned the corner, we saw all the kids in front of the school, hundreds of them talking to each other in little groups, laughing or standing with their parents, who were talking to other parents. I kept my head down. "Everyone's just as nervous as you are," said Via and Mayor. "Just remember that this is everyone's first day of school, okay?" Mr. Tushman was greeting students and parents in front of the school entrance. I have to admit, so far, nothing bad had happened. I didn't catch anyone staring at me or even noticing me. Only once did I look up to see some girl looking in my way and whispering with her hands cupped over her mouth, but they looked away when they saw me notice. We reached the entrance of the school. So this is it, big boy, said Dad, putting his hands on top of my shoulder. Have a great first day. I love you, said Via, giving me a big kiss and hug. You too, I said. I love you, Augie, said Dad, hugging me. Bye. Then Mom hugged me, but I just could tell she was about to cry, which would have totally embarrassed me. So I just gave her a fast, hard hug and turned and disappeared into the school. Locks. I went straight to room 301 on the 3rd floor. Now I was glad I had gone on that little tour because I knew exactly where to go and didn't have to look up once. I noticed that some kids were definitely staring at me now. I did my thing of pretending not to notice. I went inside the classroom and the teacher was writing on the chalkboard while the kids started sitting in different desks. The desks were in half circles facing the chalkboard, so I chose the desk in the middle towards the back, which I thought would make it harder for anyone to stare at me. I still kept my head way down, just looking enough from under my bags to see everyone's feet. As the desk started to fill up, I noticed that no one sat next to me. A couple of times someone was about to sit next to me and then changed his or her mind at the last minute and sat somewhere else. Hey, August. It was Charlotte giving me her little wave as she sat down at the desk at the front of the class. Why anyone would ever choose to sit way up the front of class, I don't know. Hey, I said, nodding hello. Then I noticed Julian was sitting a few seats away from her talking to some other kids. I know he saw me, but he didn't say hello. Suddenly, someone was sitting next to me. It was Jack Will. Jack! What's up? He said, nodding at me. Hey, Jack, I answered, waving my hand, which I immediately wished I hadn't done because it felt kind of uncool. Okay, kids. Okay, everybody settle down, said the teacher. Now facing us, she had written her name, Mrs. Piazzo, on the chalkboard. Everybody find a seat, and please come in. She said into the couple of kids who just walked into the room. There's a seat there, right there. She hadn't noticed me. Now the first thing I want everybody to do is stop talking, and she noticed me. Put your backpacks down and be quiet. She had only hesitated for a millionth of a second, but I could tell the moment she saw me. Like I said, I'm used to it by now. I'm going to take attendance and do the seating chart, she continued, sitting on the edge of the desk. Next to her were 3 neat rows of accordion folders. When I call your name, come up and I'll hand you the folder with your name on it. It contains your class schedule, your combination lock, which you should not try to open until I tell you, and your locker number is written on the class schedule. Be forewarned that some of the lockers are not right outside the class, but down the hall. And before anyone even thinks of asking, no, you can't switch lockers and you can't switch locks. Then, if there's time at the end of this period, we're all going to get to know each other a little better. Okay? Okay. She picks up the clipboard on her desk and started reading the names out loud. Okay, so Julian Albans, she says, looking up. Julian raises his hand and said here at the same time. Hi, Julian, she says, making a note on her seating chart. She picked up the first folder and held it out towards him. Come pick it up, she said, kind of no nonsense, and he got up and took it from her. Ixima Chin. She handed the folder to each kid as she read off their names. As she went down the list, I noticed that the seat next to me was only one still empty, even though there were 2 kids sitting at one desk just a few seats away. When she called the name of one of them, a big kid named Henry Joplin, who already looked like a teenager, she said, Henry, there's an empty desk right over there. Why don't you take a seat? She handed him his folder and pointed to the desk next to mine. Although I don't look at him directly, I could tell Henry did not want to move next to me, just by the way he dragged his backpack on the floor as he came over, like he was moving in slow motion. Then he plopped on his backpack up really high on the right side of the desk, so it was kind of a wall between his desk and mine. Maya Moksovitz, Miss Pesos was saying. Here, said the girl about 4 desks away from me. Miles Norrie. Here, said the kid who has been sitting with Henry Joplin. As he walked back to his desk, I saw him shoot a Henry poor you look. August Pullman, said Mrs. Petso. Here, I said quietly, raising my hand a bit. Hi, August, she said, smiling at me very nicely. When I went up to get my folder, I kind of felt everyone's eyes burning into the back for a few seconds, and I stood in front of the class, and everybody looked down when I walked back to my desk. I resisted spinning the combination when I sat down, even though everyone else was doing that because she had specifically told us not to. I was already pretty good at opening locks anyways because I've used them on my bike. Henry kept trying to open his lock but couldn't. He was getting frustrated with the kind of cursing underneath his breath. Mrs. Pietro called out the next few names. The last name was Jack Will. After she handed Jack his folder, she said, "Okay, everybody, write your combination down somewhere safe that you won't forget it. But if you forget, which happens at least 3.2 times per year, Mrs. Garcia has a list and combination numbers. Now go ahead and take your locks and go out to your folders and spend a couple of minutes practicing how to open them, though. I know some of you went ahead and did this anyways." She was looking at Henry, and when she said that, "And in the meanwhile, I'll tell you guys a little something about myself, and then you guys can tell me a little about yourself. Well, we'll get to know each other," she said. "Sounds good? Good." She smiled at everyone, though I felt she was smiling at me the most. It wasn't a shiny smile like Mrs. Garcia's smile, but a normal smile, like she had meant it. She looked very different from what I had thought the teachers were going to look like. I guess I thought she looked like Miss Fowl from Jimmy Neutron, the old lady with a big bun on top of her head. But in fact, she looked exactly like Mom Motha from Star Wars episode 6. Haircut kind of like a boy and big white shirt, kind of like a tunic. She turned around and started writing on the chalkboard. Henry still couldn't get his lock open, and he was getting more and more frustrated every time someone else popped one open. He got really annoyed when I was able to open mine on the first try. The funny thing is, if he hadn't put his backpack between us, I most definitely would have offered to help him. Around the room. Mrs. Petzo told us a little bit about who she was. It was boring stuff, where she originally came from and how she always wanted to be a teacher, and she left her job on Wall Street about 6 years ago to pursue her dream and teach kids. She ended by asking if anyone had any questions, and Julian raised his hand. "Yes," she said, and she looked at the list and remembered his name, Julian. "That's cool about you pursuing your dreams," he said. "Thank you." "You're welcome," he smiled proudly. "Okay, so why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself, Julian?" "Actually, here's what I want everyone to do. Think of 2 things you want people to know about you." "Actually, wait a minute. How many of you came from Beecher Prep Lower School?" About half the kids raised their hand. "Okay, so a few of you already know each other. But the rest of you, I guess you're new to the school, right?" "Okay, so everyone think of 2 things you want to know, other people to know about you. And if you know some of the other kids, try to think of things they don't already know about you." Okay, so let's start with Julian and then go around the room. Julian scrunched up his face and started chapping his forehead like he was thinking really hard. "Okay, whenever you're ready," Mrs. Petzo said. "Okay, so number 1 is that, do me a favor and start with your name, okay?" Mrs. Petzo interrupted. "It'll help me remember." "Okay," said Julian. "And so my name is Julian, and my number 1 thing is I like to tell everybody about myself is I just got Battleground Mystic for my Wii, and it's totally awesome. Number 2 thing is that I got a ping pong table this summer." "Very nice. I love ping pong," Mrs. Petzo said. Does anyone else have any questions for Julian? "Is Battleground Mystic multiplayer or 1 player?" the kid named said Miles. "Not those kind of questions, guys," said Mrs. Petzo. "Okay, so how about you?" And she pointed to Charlotte, probably because her desk was the closest to the front. "Oh, sure." Charlotte didn't hesitate even for a second, like she knew exactly what she wanted to say. "My name is Charlotte, and I have 2 sisters, and we got a new puppy named Suki in the summer. We got her from an animal shelter, and she's so cute." "That's great, Charlotte. Thank you," said Mrs. Petzo. "Okay, then, who's next?"